Happy New Year, Evie.
Happy New Year, Ray, and to everybody else, our audience who's been loyal. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
and today actually marks our 1 year anniversary, almost to the day
Yeah.
we started the show 1 year ago. So this is our 1 year anniversary, and before we even begin, I want to give a special
That
shout out to two new listeners, Ronnie and Aria. They are from Sao Paulo, Brazil. They're new to the show, and Aria listens to our show via a podcast. The area they live in Sao Paulo, the English is not necessarily a native tongue or native language to that area, so she listens to our audio podcast to help her with her learning of the English language. So what we're going to do, I think, beginning next month, is try to make our audio portions of the podcast a little bit more conversational, have kind of a bit of a rolling opening introduction to the show. So we're going to keep it still on point,
oh,
but
definitely.
keep it a little more entertainment value, talk about movies a little bit, keep it interesting, but just have maybe about a little more conversation so you get to know us, Evie and myself, but yet getting into the topics at hand. Also, with this particular show, and I think the next couple of shows, we're going to deviate a little bit on the audio portion as well as the video. So, for instance, today I'm gonna share my opinion on Tony Stark. I'll be leaning my opinion on him more in the audio portion of the podcast, and my thoughts towards the building of the team in the second one. But with this one, we're going to do something a little bit different. I am going to just touch on those aspects, but really we're going to make the audio portion and the YouTube channel a little bit more distinct. Directed and written by Josh Whedon, a master craftsman in film and in television. He's the creator and showrunner for Buffy, Angel, Dollhouse, Firefly. So he's been around for writing movies as well. Like, let's say, for instance, Cabin in the Woods. He writes for strong women. He understands the dynamic between men and women and giving them full and rich characters. There are scenes. One of my favorite scenes in Justice League is the scenes. There are two scenes with Flash and Cyborg. It is those quiet moments of inflection and of dialogue that they have, and the one that stands out top of my head right now is when they're in the graveyard digging out Superman's body. They're having a conversation, and in those just casual conversations, those little nuanced conversations, in those lighter moments, you're getting more of not necessarily a backstory or not necessarily moving the needle forward in terms of storytelling, but you're giving these characters more dimension and making you as an audience have a connection with these characters or liking them more. And within the Battle of New York, the sequences that you see are very enjoyable, and there's a sense of realism or just the camaraderie between characters is always refreshing. So, Evie, what is your opinion of Age of Ultron when you for the very first time you saw it? Like, what was your initial impressions?
When I first saw this movie, I thought it was really cool because you had a lot of heroes and villains in it. It's first time I've seen that rather than like maybe couple villains, just like the X-Men or something, plus villains. Wow, I thought that was really well done. But there was also a lot to even take in too, because you had so much information. But other than that, it was a great movie. Special effects were good, scenery was great. That's why I had to watch it a second time. But although it was still an amazing movie, that's why I had to rewatch it.
Right. Well, for rewatching it, if you put Endgame in full view of this, then there's a couple of things that stand out for me, which I'm going to say. One, it is the story arcs. I think the story arcs you see where the seeds are first initially planted. The one arc that doesn't really go anywhere is the story between Black Widow and Bruce Banner's character. It begins, it ends in this movie. And if you watch the director's cut or the deleted scene, you get a bonus of where the relationship gets killed off, which is why there's no further story with those two, which is unfortunate because I would like to see where that would have gone. But like stories, but the thing of, for instance, Scarlet Witch. She loses her family and she inherits a subsurrogate family with joining the Avengers, her new family.
Yeah.
This is where we get the Vision. He also joins the Avengers, being literally born yesterday, he joins the Avengers. This is his new team, his new surrogate family himself, and this is where they meet, and this is where the relationship will start to grow. Within the compounds of being a family dynamic, though with military and whatever, this is a family that they never had, both of them. Or were denied, in her case, Scarlet Witch, for a long time. So there are certain seeds that are planted here. The other thing is, this film, in my opinion, I thought this is the film where the Scarlet Witch implanted those nightmares to everybody. But in my opinion, by looking at it now, I feel that those nightmares were a distortion of a future. They were giving a glimpse of their future, though distorted and twisted in some sense. Nonetheless, each of those nightmares has come to pass. Right. With Captain America, he ends up going back to live in the past, but his motivations are the fact that he is a man out of time. He has a living nightmare. This goes back to Ultimate Avengers, the animated movie. The second one, more or less, you can see he actually has nightmares in the cartoon, and of the same thing. And that's that cartoon actually kind of shows you more detail of what the nightmares really is. Outliving everybody, he was created. He joined the army to become a super soldier, and he wakes up, with the war gone. He has no purpose anymore. There's a line he tells the Fury, "Are you getting me back into the world?" And then because he's outlived the world, the whole purpose of his experiment was to be a soldier, and that's been denied, or he's no longer valid, and everyone he loved is gone. So you get that, and then of course there is who else? Okay, the Hulk. No, because no one knows what that is, and it might be kind of weird. But like Thor, he brings Ragnarok to his people. When he meets Heimdall, Heimdall tells him, "You've killed us all." And because in the third installment, he actually brings Ragnarok to Asgard, and he destroys his home planet. So there is some truth to the visions. To back that up, we're looking at Scarlet Witch. She gets nightmares of her time in Russia, going to the Red Room and to the ballet and her training. So when we get to Civil War, after that event, we're going to Black Widow the movie, and she goes back to Russia to face the Red Room, to face the people who trained her. So there is a foretelling of the future, and she is a fugitive after the events of Civil War. So she is uncomfortable, and she's going back to her past, uncomfortable. So that's something I kind of found interesting. And my only remark I'll make about Tony Stark, and again, if you listen to the podcast, I'll go much more deeper in it, is that similar to Iron Man 2, where he was Tony Stark versus the United States for the mech suit, his IP of the mech suit, the government wanted his plans because the suit can influence, whoever has it can influence the balance of power. And he brokered world peace, but it was just, if it goes into the wrong hands, and if anyone had a glimpse of his technology, it can really change the balance of power, and that was the concern of the U.S. government. So when we look at Ultron and this whole thing, well, Scarlet Witch gave him a future. I don't want to say the Chitauri, but when the alien invasion happened again, which it does, everyone dies. That was his vision, and he survives it. And in what really happened, if you think about it, in Infinity War, everyone does die, and he lives through it. So it is a foretelling of the future for every case. And just to go a little bit further with the Tony Stark's implication, is that Tony, which again, I don't think they ever explored this aspect or this avenue of the films, is that Tony is criminally liable and financially responsible for the destruction of Ultron's doing. Because Ultron by design is his IP. So, which is loss of life, kidnapping, murder, destruction of private property, a slew of things. By association, because it is his creation, even though Ultron is self-aware, not necessarily Johnny 5 from Short Circuit, more like Skynet, Ultron is still a property and a creation of Tony Stark. And in the eyes of the law, he's still the idea of being self-aware and artificial intelligent does not excuse Stark because he created them, aware of the fact that the idea of Ultron was to create artificial intelligence. So, and then of course the Sokovia codes and Sokovia Accord and all that is flipped on the dime for against the other heroes. But like Stark ultimately is responsible. So, in your opinion, Evie, what is your impression of Tony Stark?
Yeah, he's selfish. He always has been selfish. He just cares about himself. Yeah, and so like in the end of the last Avengers movies, I'm like, well, good, he died or whatever. No, but yeah, yeah, Stark is selfish, although like the last deed he did by actually taking the brunt of what who's the
Thanos, right.
yeah,
I'm
Thanos
going to also
guy?
add one
Yeah.
last thing is that with Thor, if you watch the director's cut, he's being possessed by the Nords of Fate. And they kind of give the exposition of what is going on. And that's also when we get the exposition of the Infinity Stones. And when all the heroes are aware of what Infinity Stones are, and there's a chase for them, and this is what there's a big conspiracy
Yeah.
to grab these, and there's a darker motivation for them. Now, if you watch the movie of it's a Silent Pictures, The Mighty Thor, you get a glimpse or introduction, a physical introduction to the Nords of Fate. They introduce themselves to Odin and to Thor. We start
Yeah,
off
you're
with
right.
We start off with Odin's death, and then Ragnarok falling and burning, and then the death of the death of millions, including the ash and rubble of Asgard, which is Ragnarok. So, and they are a physical representation in that movie. I'm not saying that movie is good because it is not, but if you see that movie, it kind of gives you more of a physical context of what Thor was going through in the pond. But he was
Yeah.
possessed by them to get an understanding of the future and what his nightmares meant. And
Yeah.
so, if you haven't watched the movie recently and have a chance to get the Blu-ray or watch the bonus features, I'd recommend looking at the deleted scenes and maybe also listening to some of the commentary by Josh Whedon to explain uh, Thor's journey into the pond and seeing what the actual sequence actually is. Because what we see in the theatrical cut, it was cut completely wrong, and it makes, I won't say it makes no sense, but the actual cut itself that the director should have put on the big screen. It's on the Blu-ray, and you can take a look at that. I strongly recommend that if that's one of the sour points of watching this movie. But with that, I think that pretty much covers it up. So with that, I'm going to say I'm Ray,
I'm Evie.
and we'll talk to you next week.